Well, good morning and welcome back to the Pacific Northwest. I've made my way out this morning to an area called the Middle Fork of the Snoqualmie River. And it's a pretty remote area, pretty remote for a couple of reasons. One is there's not a lot of traffic out here in the wintertime. And the road coming in had quite a few trees down that hadn't been completely cleared from the snowstorm that we had about a week and a half ago. So I've actually seen no one out this far this morning, but I've made my way down to the Middle Fork here, Middle Fork of the Snoqualmie River, and this vantage point just off the roadway gives me a view of Russian Butte. And kind of waiting on some light this morning. It's about 10 minutes until sunrise, but thankfully we have had some mist moving through the valley. Although there's not a lot in the composition right now, I do see some moving from east to west, kind of behind the trees but below the butte. But I've got this first composition of the day framed up. I'm going to sit here for a few minutes and see how the light and composition develops. But I'm pretty happy with this, and hopefully I can walk away with a decent image. Well, I'll let you know what I'm thinking here. So I'm kind of tucked in against this dead tree here, but framed up the composition. I have the 24-70 lens on. A couple things I'm thinking about. There's no really foreground interest. We have the river kind of in the foreground, but it's not providing any interest other than kind of acting as a frame in the lower part of the composition. I might have the Russian Butte just off center on the right hand side, and I do have a tree on the right hand side that's entering into the top corner of the frame, and I also have some pine trees on the left hand side that help to balance the image. There are a few twigs on the extreme upper left hand corner that I may need to or elect to take out in Photoshop. We'll see how that looks when I get back home. There are some clouds moving through in the mid-ground, and so I'm just taking a few images to capture that mist just below the peak and behind the trees on the other side of the river. But overall, waiting for some balance. But the composition looks good. I'll hang out here for a few more minutes and see if the composition gets better. Right now, the top of the peak is covered with a little bit of cloud, but in a few minutes I'll finish up here and move on to my second composition of the morning. Well, you can see that I'm literally in the middle of the road, but hey, whatever it takes to get the composition, right? It's still raining, but before I headed further down the road, I saw this group of, which I believe are white birch trees. This area is a kind of a partial or semi-floodplain, and so the tree types really depend on the moisture of the soil. But I was looking at this, I was immediately drawn to the symmetry of the trees, the white bark and the green moss. But what really makes this composition is, among all of these birch trees, there's one lonely, kind of scraggly looking pine tree. And I think that's really what makes the story of this image. Of course, everyone likes a picture or a photograph of nice symmetry with trees, but I think the challenge in those photographs is to tell some story. So the lonely pine tree among this this grove of what I believe, don't quote me on that, are white birch trees. So I saw this as a 16 by 9 composition. I'm using the 24 to 70 with a lens hood, still raining. And I'm shooting this at f5.6 because I want the background to be soft. And at 35 millimeter, it gives me still a fairly wide depth of field, but it allows the background to just kind of drop off in softness. There's a nice ridge line in the background. There's good light, and so I'm going to go ahead and take this one and finish up here, and hopefully still have time for one more photograph this morning. Well, it's starting to rain pretty good, so I'm going to take my pack off, put on my pack cover, put that camera inside of my backpack, and make my way down to the river. It's about like 4/10 or half a mile, something like that. Nice trail down to the river. Hopefully give me another perspective and a different composition. So pack away. It's raining pretty good right now, and make my way down to the river. Well, the A7R IV is definitely in its element in the Pacific Northwest this morning. As I'm walking down to the river, I came upon this grove of uniquely moss-covered trees, and it's a mix of evergreens and deciduous trees, but they're tightly grouped in this one area here. And I've actually never seen anything like this. I've been to the rainforest at the Cove River at Mount Rainier, and I've been through the rainforest areas, part of them along the Olympic Peninsula, but I've never seen a grouping quite like this. Kind of reminds me of a forest of big mossy green spiders. But I found this this grouping of trees here that was very interesting. It is a small grouping that comes out and forms a fan of sorts with some lovely moss-covered branches. It's still raining, although it has let up a little bit, so all the moss is covered in moisture. And so I have the 24 to 70 on. I'm about 25 millimeters on this composition, and so I'm going to tweak a little bit and see what I can come up with. Well, for this last composition of the day, I made my way down on the Oxbow Loop Trail. Brings you down to the back down to the edge of the middle fork of the Snoqualmie River here. For this I did scout around. Unfortunately, there's no views. We're on the back side of the Mount Si conservation area, which includes Mount Si and Mount Tenerife. But everything right now is socked in clouds. It was raining really heavily when I got here. So all the peaks are now obscured, unfortunately. I did get a test shot when I got here, but I'm hoping that I can wait it out and some things will open up once these clouds hopefully move through, but we'll see. Well, thankfully the clouds did part enough just to see the peak on the backside of the Mount Si, Mount Tenerife conservation area. You can't see the peak or the ridge completely, but that's kind of par for the course today. It's been a very moody, atmospheric, rain, wet Pacific Northwest day. Real quick on this composition, I'm kind of in an uncomfortable spot, but I'm not using the river at all. I'm using the trees on the other side of the river as a base of this frame to form the lower edge of the composition. I've positioned the peak on roughly the right third, and we do have some atmosphere moving in and out. Well, I was able to come away with at least a little bit of a composition. The clouds parted enough to see the back edge of the Mount Si, Mount Tenerife area. For this last composition, I'll just talk you through it because I've already taken it. I didn't use the river at all. I used the trees on the other side of the river as kind of a base of the frame. And I used the peak that on the roughly the right third. And because the peak did add some imbalance to the frame, there is a group of trees on the left-hand side, a taller group of trees, that help to keep the frame in balance. So, not a great composition, but with the atmosphere and the clouds moving in and out today, and with the rain, it's kind of been a fitting end to how this morning's been. It's actually been a great morning. I'm having to deal with the rain and the moisture and the wetness of the Pacific Northwest, but that's normal this time of year. So I guess that's going to do it from the middle fork of the Snoqualmie River. I hope you enjoyed coming along. Actually got more compositions than I had planned on. So yeah, I think I'll get my stuff back to the car, head home and dry everything out. So again, thanks for coming along. Thanks for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you like the video, I always appreciate a thumbs up. And if you want to get updates on my journey as a landscape photographer, well then consider hitting that subscribe button. And so got a little bit of a walk back to the car. So until next time, I'll see you in the next video.